Hello! I hope everyone had a good Halloween. I spent mine vegetating on the couch watching like 15 hours of television and eating a ton of candy. So I'd say that's definitely a successful Halloween. But I just wanted to make a quick video talking about my current build in Path of Exile, which is a Boneshatter Juggernaut. More specifically, a strength stacking Boneshatter Juggernaut. Obviously, this is nothing really new, but the most interesting thing I found about this build is that even though the gear is mostly similar between most people's setups, the passive tree is actually quite different from one another. And that's really what I wanted to talk about in this build, as well as just keep you guys updated as what I'm doing in Path of Exile. And for those of you who don't know, I stream Path of Exile almost every day now over on twitch.tv/bmoregaming, so be sure to stop by and give me a follow if you haven't already. Okay, so here's my current tree setup and items for my build. I really don't want to talk too much about the DPS or anything. I mostly just want to talk about some of the different setups people have gone with this build, and now with the new masteries in place, I want to talk a little bit about those as well. Currently, I'm only sitting at around 438 strength, which I know is god-awful for a strength stacking character, but that number will go up once I just get more currency and more items. But what I've been experiencing with this build so far is that the AoE is very hit or miss. I either jump into a pack and one-shot the whole thing, or I sit there kind of like getting 3 or 4 mobs here and 5 or 6 here, and the clear can feel very inconsistent. And so I've been thinking, what can I do to make this feel a little bit better? For those of you who don't know, Boneshatter has a pulsing AoE that scales off of the stun duration that you cause on enemies. The pulse has 15% increased area of effect per 0.1 seconds of stun duration by default, but this can go up to 400%. This means scaling your stun durations on enemies can scale the AoE of this pulse significantly. And so I've spent quite a bit of time on PoE Ninja just looking at different setups to see how other people are doing it. Now obviously my build is still in the very early stages, so it could just be that the more damage I get and the more strength that I get, I'll just get more stun duration just naturally that way. And being that I've never played this build before, that could very well be the case. But I've also been looking at other ways that I could possibly do this, especially since I'm using a staff, which is not really the best item for stuns. And there are actually quite a few masteries now that can help with this. So let's take a look at the staff mastery. Of course, I'm sure many of you already know that the staff mastery is pretty awful, but I found this 20% chance to double stun duration very interesting. But 20% chance seems kind of low and might not actually be worth grabbing by itself. There's also this set of nodes here called kinetic impacts, and the notable passive here gives you 10% chance to double stun duration. So grabbing kinetic impacts with the staff mastery would give you a 30% chance to double stun duration. Now would that be good enough to take those 2 nodes? I'm not entirely sure. If your attack rate is high enough, it might be worth it, but chances are you might just be running into packs of monsters and hitting them 2 or 3 times, and 30% chance might not be that good, especially for all that investment. But there are a couple other stun masteries that might help with this. The two-hand mastery gives you one that's 15% more stun duration with two-handed weapons. And perhaps one of the better masteries for this setup is within the critical masteries, which gives stuns from critical strikes have 100% increased duration. And given that this build is a critical strike based build, this could prove to be very useful. I've also opted in for an endurance charge on melee stun support, which gives my supported skill Boneshatter 12% reduced enemy stun threshold. I'm not entirely sure what my final end game links will be, but that's what I'm using at the moment. Another interesting thing about this build is the Iron Fortress Crusader plate that pretty much every single Boneshatter Jug chooses to use. Well, every strength stacking Boneshatter Jug anyway. And this gives you 1% chance to block attack damage per 50 strength, but it makes your chance to block spell damage unlucky. Now, if you're using this chest piece, a very useful keystone to use with it would be Versatile Combatant, which lowers your chance to block spell damage and attack damage, but you get 2% chance to block spell damage for each 1% overcap chance to block attack damage, which you should have a pretty decent amount of. What I found most interesting about this is that pretty much every single Juggernaut, strength stacking Juggernaut on PoE Ninja was not grabbing this node. To be fair, those are all soft core players, and Juggernauts can be pretty tanky by themselves. But I feel like this is definitely something worth considering if you're going for this setup. As for my Ascendancy, I still haven't got my last 2 points yet. This is another area of the build where I see a lot of variation, specifically with the last 2 points. Pretty much every setup grabs Undeniable, Unstoppable, and Unflinching, but I've seen different variations grab Unbreakable, I've seen some grab Unrelenting, and I've seen some grab Unyielding as well. Unyielding could help a lot with the AoE problem that I was talking about earlier, because it gives you increased area of effect per endurance charge, and you get 10% increased stun duration on enemies per endurance charge as well. But if you find yourself to be a little bit squishy, then grabbing something like Unrelenting or Unbreakable might be more worth your time, especially if the things we talked about on the tree can help with your AoE. So I'm not entirely sure which nodes I'm going to grab last. I'm leaning towards Unyielding though, because I'm not sure I really want to put a ton of investment on my passive tree just to get some AoE, especially considering that AoE might not be as consistent as I want it to be. If I do put any points into my passive tree to help with my AoE problem, it'll probably be in the Critical Mastery, for the stuns from critical strikes have 100% increased duration. There's also this set of AoE nodes here as well for melee skills. I might end up grabbing these at some point because the attack masteries are actually very good, and it's something that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about. But yeah guys, that pretty much sums up where I'm at right now with my build. Like I said, still very early on. I just wanted to give you guys an update of what's going on with me and my Path of Exile character. As I said earlier, make sure to stop by my stream and you can check out the Boneshatter Jug in action there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.